I'm Nathan Davis, 42 years old, and until last month, I thought I had the perfect life. 18 years of marriage to Linda, our 17-year-old son Ethan, a beautiful home in Connecticut. Then everything shattered when Linda admitted she was cheating. I needed a real man. She smirked, her words cutting deeper than any knife. But nothing prepared me for Ethan taking her side. I just smiled, grabbed my keys and walked out. If you're curious what happened next when my phone exploded with 32 missed calls, drop a comment saying where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into this story together. Linda and I met during our sophomore year at University of Michigan. I was studying computer science, and she was majoring in business with dreams of becoming a successful real estate agent. Our first encounter happened in the campus library, where I accidentally knocked over her stack of marketing textbooks. As I helped gather her scattered materials, our eyes met, and there was an instant connection that I can still remember vividly to this day. Our romance moved quickly. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Linda was beautiful, ambitious, and full of life. Her blonde hair and blue eyes captivated me, but it was her ambition and intelligence that truly won my heart. We spent countless nights discussing our dreams for the future, planning our lives together as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When I proposed on graduation day, hiding the ring in her diploma case, her joyful tears seemed genuine. We married that summer in a modest ceremony with close friends and family. Both sets of parents warned us about rushing, but we were young and in love. Nothing could convince us to wait. Ethan came along a year later. I still remember the first time I held him in my arms at Fairfield General Hospital. He was so tiny, with Linda's blue eyes and what would later become my brown hair. That moment changed everything for me. I was no longer just a husband. I was a father with a son who depended on me. The responsibility felt overwhelming, but in the best possible way. "He's perfect, just like you," Linda had whispered from her hospital bed, and I believed every word. The three of us settled into our life in Fairfield, Connecticut. I secured a position as a software engineer at Tech Solutions, a growing company that offered good benefits and stability. The work wasn't particularly exciting, but it paid well and allowed me to provide for my family. Linda built her real estate career slowly but steadily, becoming one of the top agents in our area within 5 years. Our home was a colonial-style 4-bedroom in a quiet suburban neighborhood with excellent schools. We'd stretched our budget to afford it, but the investment seemed worth it for Ethan's future. Every morning, I'd watch him walk to the bus stop from our kitchen window, feeling proud of the life we'd created. Sundays were sacred in our household. We had a tradition of making elaborate brunches together. Linda would prepare her famous blueberry pancakes, I'd handle the bacon and eggs, and as he got older, Ethan became responsible for the fresh squeezed orange juice. After eating, we'd often play board games or go for bike rides around the neighborhood. Each summer, we'd spend 2 weeks in Cape Cod, staying at the same beachfront rental. Ethan learned to swim in those Atlantic waters, and some of my fondest memories are of building sandcastles with him, while Linda took photos that later filled our family albums. Those vacations weren't exotic or luxurious, but they were perfect for us. When Ethan turned 10, Tech Solutions offered me a promotion that would have significantly increased my salary but required relocating to their Seattle office. Without hesitation, I turned it down. My family's stability and Ethan's education were more important than career advancement. Linda had seemed appreciative at the time, kissing me and calling me the best husband and father. I never regretted that decision, even when colleagues passed me on the corporate ladder. Ethan and I had always been close. I coached his Little League team for 6 years, taught him to drive in empty parking lots before he got his learner's permit, and stayed up late helping with science projects. He confided in me about his first crush, and I gave him advice about navigating high school social dynamics. I thought our bond was unbreakable. Our home was filled with family photos displaying smiles that I believed represented genuine happiness. There was the professional portrait taken for our 15th anniversary, all three of us in coordinating outfits against a neutral background. There were candid shots from Ethan's basketball games, Linda's real estate awards ceremonies, and my company picnics. We appeared to be the definition of a successful, loving family. Looking back, I should have noticed when things began to change. About 2 years ago, Linda started missing our Sunday brunches for property showings. At first, it was occasional, but gradually became more frequent. Ethan and I maintained the tradition, but it wasn't the same without her. When I mentioned this to Linda, she dismissed my concerns, saying her career needed to take priority sometimes. I supported her ambition, so I didn't push the issue. The family vacations changed too. Linda began suggesting we skip Cape Cod for more exciting destinations, though when we tried Myrtle Beach one year, she spent most of the time on her phone, claiming work emergencies. Ethan seemed disappointed, but neither of us confronted her directly. I believed we were just going through a phase that many long-term marriages experience. I was confident that our foundation was strong enough to weather any temporary disconnection. After all, we had built this life together, and everything I did was for our family's happiness and security. How could I have been so blind to what was happening right under my nose? The first undeniable sign that something was wrong came when Linda joined an expensive fitness club across town, bypassing the perfectly good gym just 3 blocks from our house. She claimed this new place had specialized equipment that would help her achieve her fitness goals faster. I was supportive at first. After all, taking care of herself was important, and if this made her happy, I was all for it. Soon, Linda's wardrobe began transforming. The conservative business attire she'd worn for years gave way to form-fitting dresses and higher heels. When I complimented her new look, she barely acknowledged me, saying only that she needed to step up her game to compete with younger agents entering the market. Her weekly hair appointments turned into bi-weekly salon visits that included highlights, manicures, and what she called self-care days. The most concerning change was her schedule. Linda started leaving earlier and returning later, often not making it home until after 8 or 9 o'clock. When I'd call to check if she'd be home for dinner, she'd sound irritated, claiming she was with clients or at networking events. Sometimes I'd hear laughter or music in the background that didn't sound like any business meeting I'd ever attended. "You don't understand the real estate business," she'd snap when I questioned her. "Relationships are built after hours, not during the workday." Her attachment to her phone became obsessive. It never left her hand, and she'd take calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones. One night, I noticed her changing her password when she caught me glancing over as she unlocked her screen. The next morning, she changed the password on her laptop too. Physical intimacy between us had dwindled significantly. What had once been a fulfilling part of our marriage became almost non-existent. When I tried to initiate, Linda would claim she was too tired or had an early showing the next day. The rare times we were intimate, she seemed distant, going through the motions without emotional connection. Linda began criticizing aspects of my life she'd never questioned before. My reliable Honda became embarrassingly practical, compared to the luxury cars her colleagues drove. My comfortable wardrobe was suddenly sloppy and unprofessional. She even began questioning my career choices. "Don't you want more than just being a cog in the corporate machine?" she asked during one particularly painful dinner conversation. "Richard says a man with your experience could be earning twice as much if you just take some risks." I didn't know who Richard was at the time, but I'd find out soon enough. Determined to rekindle our connection, I planned surprise date nights. I made reservations at upscale restaurants, bought tickets to shows she'd expressed interest in, and even arranged a weekend getaway to a bed and breakfast in Vermont where we'd spent our 5th anniversary. Each effort was met with lukewarm appreciation at best, outright annoyance at worst. For our 18th anniversary, I gave her a diamond bracelet I'd been saving for over a year to purchase. She opened the box, barely looked at it, and said, "That's nice, Nathan," before returning to her phone. The bracelet remained in its box, unworn. Meanwhile, Ethan's attitude toward me shifted subtly. Our father-son talks became shorter, his responses more clipped. He stopped asking for my help with homework or advice about school issues. When I suggested activities we used to enjoy together, he'd claim he was too busy or make excuses to avoid spending time with me. One evening, I came home early from work and overheard Linda and Ethan in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway when I heard my name. "Your father just doesn't understand ambition," Linda was saying. "He's content being average. You should aim higher, Ethan. Look at how much more successful Richard became because he wasn't afraid to take chances." There was that name again. Richard. "Dad's kind of boring," Ethan replied, the casual dismissal of my character cutting deep. "All he talks about is computer stuff and saving for retirement." I quietly retreated to the garage, sitting in my car for nearly an hour before I could compose myself enough to enter the house and pretend I hadn't heard their conversation. Self-doubt crept in like a slow poison. I started examining my appearance critically in the mirror each morning. Had I let myself go? At 42, I was still in decent shape, though I carried an extra 15 pounds around my midsection. My hairline had receded slightly, and gray peppered my temples. I wasn't the college athlete Linda had married, but I wasn't the middle-aged stereotype she seemed to be painting me as either. I began working out at home, bought new clothes that fit better, and even got a contemporary haircut. Linda barely noticed, or if she did, she didn't comment. My efforts to improve myself seemed invisible to the woman who had once looked at me with adoration. The following month, Linda announced she needed to attend a real estate conference in Chicago, which happened to fall on our anniversary weekend. When I pointed this out, she seemed genuinely surprised, as if the date held no significance. She went anyway, promising to make it up to me when she returned. During her absence, while cleaning up Ethan's mess in the living room, I found a receipt that had fallen from Linda's purse before she left. It was from Giovanni's, an expensive Italian restaurant in our town that we never visited together. The receipt showed dinner for two, with an expensive bottle of wine, dated just 3 days earlier. When I checked our credit card statement online, the charge wasn't there. She'd paid cash or used a card I didn't know about. When Linda returned from Chicago, I asked her about the receipt, trying to keep my tone casual and non-accusatory. "You're going through my things now?" she responded, snatching the paper from my hand. "It was a business dinner with a potential client. God, Nathan, your insecurity is getting out of hand. This paranoia isn't attractive." Her defensive reaction only intensified my suspicions, but I backed down, not wanting to create more tension in our already strained relationship. That night, I lay awake beside her sleeping form, wondering when and how the woman I married had become this stranger who seemed to barely tolerate my presence. After finding the restaurant receipt, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was happening behind my back. My mind raced with possibilities, each more painful than the last. I needed concrete evidence before confronting Linda again, something she couldn't dismiss as paranoia. One evening while Linda was showering, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our phone records online. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, often late at night or during her supposed networking events. Some calls lasted over an hour, and on days she claimed to be showing properties, her phone's location data showed her at residential addresses that weren't listed on the market. The number belonged to Richard Blackwood, the managing broker at Linda's real estate office. A quick social media search revealed a tan, fit man in his late 40s with an expensive watch and tailored suits. His profile was filled with photos of luxury cars and vacations to exotic locations. Everything about him screamed wealth and status. Everything Linda had recently begun to suggest I lacked. I considered confronting her immediately but decided to gather more information first. The following Friday, when Linda said she had a late showing, I followed her at a distance in my car. She drove directly to the Parkview Hotel downtown. Through the lobby windows, I watched as she embraced Richard in a way that left no doubt about their relationship. They took the elevator together, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. I sat in my car for hours, physically ill, unable to drive home and pretend everything was normal. Around midnight, I finally left, spending the night driving aimlessly through town, trying to process what I'd seen and decide what to do next. The next morning, Linda returned home looking refreshed and happy, claiming she'd gone for drinks with colleagues after her showing ran late. I nodded silently, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I spent the day going through the motions of normalcy while planning how to address what I now knew with certainty. Sunday morning, with Ethan at a friend's house, I finally confronted her. I laid out the evidence calmly, the phone records, the hotel, the inconsistencies in her stories. Linda stared at me for a long moment, and then, instead of denial, her expression shifted to something I'd never seen before, contempt mixed with relief, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "Fine, Nathan. Yes, I've been seeing Richard for 6 months," she admitted without a hint of remorse. "And honestly, it's a relief you finally figured it out. The sneaking around was getting exhausting." Her casual confession stunned me more than any heated denial would have. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deceit, and betrayal while I was working to save our marriage. "Why?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why not just tell me you were unhappy? We could have worked on things, gone to counseling." Linda laughed, the sound sharp and unfamiliar. "Counseling wouldn't have changed who you are, Nathan. You're reliable, safe, boring. I needed more. I needed a real man who knows what he wants and takes it, not someone who's content with mediocrity." Each word was like a physical blow. 18 years of marriage reduced to cruel dismissal. "Richard excites me," she continued, seemingly enjoying my pain. "He's ambitious, spontaneous. He shows me off, treats me like a woman should be treated. When was the last time you surprised me with anything other than another practical household appliance?" I thought of the diamond bracelet still sitting unworn in its box, the weekend getaway she'd been too busy for, the countless small gestures of love she'd dismissed over the years. "I gave you everything I had," I said quietly. "I built my entire life around making you and Ethan happy." "That's the problem," she snapped. "You've been so focused on being the perfect husband and father that you forgot to be interesting. Richard makes me feel alive." As she spoke, I heard the front door open. Ethan had returned earlier than expected. He stood in the doorway to the kitchen, looking between us with confusion. "What's going on?" he asked, his teenage face suddenly looking much younger. I tried to explain calmly, wanting to shield him from the ugliness of the moment. "Your mom and I are having an important discussion about our marriage. There have been some complications." Before I could continue, Linda interrupted. "Your father's upset because I've been seeing someone else. Someone who appreciates me and understands what I need." I was shocked by her willingness to expose our son to this situation so bluntly. "Ethan, this is a complicated adult situation. Maybe we should discuss this later when..." "There's nothing complicated about it," Linda cut in. "Your father's been suffocating me for years with his controlling behavior and constant suspicion. He went through my personal things, checked my phone records. Because you were lying and cheating." I couldn't help responding, my composure finally cracking. Ethan looked at his mother. "Is it true? You cheated on Dad?" For a moment, Linda seemed uncertain, perhaps realizing she'd made a tactical error in involving our son. Then her expression hardened. "It's not as simple as that, Ethan. Relationships are complex. Your father and I grew apart. He was always checking up on me, questioning where I was going, who I was with. He never trusted me." I watched in disbelief as she rewrote our history, casting herself as the victim and me as the villain. "That's not true," I said, turning to Ethan. "I only started questioning things when your mother's behavior changed dramatically. The late nights, the secrecy. See how he twists everything?" Linda interrupted again. "This is what I've been dealing with. Richard respects my independence. He doesn't track my movements or demand to know where I am every minute." I could see confusion and anger warring on Ethan's face as he processed this information. I expected him to see through his mother's manipulation, We had always been close, after all. Maybe if you weren't so boring, Mom wouldn't need someone else, Ethan said finally, his words striking with precision at my deepest insecurity. The room seemed to tilt around me. My son, my own flesh and blood, had taken her side without hesitation, without knowing the facts, without giving me the benefit of the doubt. In that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. Linda smiled triumphantly, placing her hand on Ethan's shoulder as if they were united against me. See, Nathan? Even Ethan can see the problem. I looked at them both, my wife of 18 years and the son I'd devoted my life to, standing together, looking at me with matching expressions of judgment and dismissal. Everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, my reality, crumbled around me. But something unexpected happened in that moment of complete devastation. A strange calm washed over me. The pain was still there, intense and raw, but alongside it came clarity. I didn't deserve this. I deserved better than a wife who could betray me so callously and a son who could dismiss me so easily. I smiled, which clearly wasn't the reaction either of them expected. Without another word, I walked to the entry hall, grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, and left. Behind me, I heard Linda call my name, her voice holding a note of surprise rather than concern. I didn't look back. I got into my car and drove away from the home I'd worked so hard to build, from the life I now realized had been an illusion for longer than I wanted to admit. The digital clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when I finally pulled into the parking lot of the Holiday Inn off the interstate. I'd been driving for hours, no destination in mind, just needing to put distance between myself and the scene of my life's implosion. The numbed shock that had carried me through the confrontation was wearing off, leaving a hollow ache that seemed to penetrate to my bones. The hotel room was generic and soulless, beige walls, floral bedspread, mass-produced artwork. It matched my emotional state perfectly. I sat on the edge of the bed, still fully clothed, staring at the silent television screen without turning it on. My phone had been buzzing intermittently with calls and texts from Linda, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. As exhaustion finally overtook me, I lay back on the unfamiliar bed, and memories flooded in unbidden. Ethan's 5th birthday party, where he'd insisted on a dinosaur theme and Linda had spent weeks planning every detail. Our 10th anniversary trip to Maine, where we'd walked hand in hand along rocky beaches. Christmas mornings with Ethan's excited face as he opened presents. Family movie nights with the three of us squeezed onto the couch, sharing popcorn and laughter. Each happy memory now felt tainted, like photographs that had been subtly altered. Had Linda been unhappy even then? Had she been comparing me to other men, finding me wanting? When had Ethan started seeing me through his mother's critical eyes rather than his own? I must have fallen asleep eventually, because I woke to sunlight streaming through the gap in the curtains and my phone showing 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. Most were from Linda, ranging from angry, "How dare you just walk out like that?" to manipulative, "Ethan is upset, you need to come home and fix this." There were 2 missed calls from Ethan but no messages. I scrolled through the texts without responding, each one reinforcing that I'd made the right decision by leaving. None expressed remorse for the affair or the cruel words, only anger that I hadn't reacted according to her script. After a shower and coffee from the hotel lobby, I finally called the one person I thought I could trust, Marcus Peterson, my best friend since college. We'd been groomsmen at each other's weddings, and our families had vacationed together several times over the years. "Nathan, I've been trying to reach you," Marcus answered immediately. "Linda called Jessica last night, said you'd had some kind of breakdown and left." The fact that she was already controlling the narrative didn't surprise me anymore. "She's been having an affair with her boss for 6 months," I said flatly. I confronted her, and she admitted it. Said she needed a real man. The silence on the other end lasted too long. "Marcus?" His sigh came through clearly. "I'm sorry, man. I knew something was going on. Another blow, unexpected and devastating." "You knew? And you didn't tell me?" "I saw them together at Riverstone Grill about 2 months ago. They didn't see me. I wanted to tell you, but Jessica thought it would be better coming from Linda. She was sure Linda would end it and confess. Jessica knew too? The betrayal expanded like a oil spill, contaminating even more of my life than I'd realized. I'm sorry, Nathan. We should have told you. We just didn't want to hurt you if it turned out to be nothing. I ended the call shortly after, unable to continue the conversation with yet another person who had prioritized Linda's feelings over my right to know the truth. My best friend had kept this secret while watching me try desperately to save my marriage. The isolation I felt deepened. By Monday morning, I knew I needed professional advice. I found Barbara Wilson, a divorce attorney with excellent reviews, who could see me that afternoon. Her office was modern but comfortable, and she listened without judgment as I explained the situation. Unfortunately, Mr. Davis, your experience is not uncommon, she said when I finished. But there are several immediate steps we need to take to protect your interests. The most urgent, she explained, was securing my finances. Following her advice, I checked our joint accounts as soon as I left her office. What I found sent me staggering back to my car in shock. Our savings account, containing nearly $50,000 we'd been setting aside for Ethan's college education, had been emptied 3 days earlier. Linda had transferred everything to an account I had no access to. This wasn't a spontaneous act of passion. Linda had been planning this, methodically preparing for the moment when everything would come to light. While I was trying to save our marriage, she was securing her exit strategy. Back in my hotel room, I found an email from my company's HR department. Linda had called them claiming I was having a mental health crisis and needed to take immediate leave. She'd already contacted my health insurance as my spouse, attempting to arrange for a psychiatric evaluation. The betrayal was becoming more calculated and frightening by the hour. I called my manager directly, explaining enough of the situation to counter Linda's narrative without sharing unnecessary personal details. He was understanding and supportive, even suggesting I work remotely for a few weeks until things stabilized. That evening, Ethan finally texted, "Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. Why did you leave us? You're breaking up our family." The message confirmed that Linda was manipulating our son's perception of events. I drafted and deleted a dozen responses, trying to find words that wouldn't put Ethan in the middle while still defending myself. Finally, I settled on, "I'm okay, Ethan. I left because I needed space to think. This is between your mother and me, but please know I love you and am here whenever you want to talk." His response came hours later. "Whatever. Mom says you've been jealous and controlling for years. Maybe if you'd been a better husband she wouldn't have needed to find someone else." The words hurt more than Linda's admission of infidelity. My son, who I'd taught to ride a bike, coached through his first heartbreak, and loved unconditionally, had fully accepted his mother's version of events without question. The relationship I'd valued above all others had been poisoned against me. The weekend arrived, and with it came the painful reality that for the first time in 17 years, I wouldn't see my son. Linda had convinced Ethan that I was unstable and potentially dangerous, allegations she'd also made to several of our mutual friends, according to the few who reached out to check on me. By Sunday evening, I hit rock bottom emotionally. Sitting alone in a hotel room, disconnected from everything and everyone I loved, I questioned every choice I'd ever made. Should I have been more exciting, less reliable? Would Linda have stayed if I'd taken that promotion in Seattle? Had I been a boring father, a disappointment to Ethan all along? These dark thoughts circled like vultures, picking at the carcass of my self-esteem. But somewhere around midnight, staring at the ceiling, something shifted inside me. If Linda could rewrite our history to justify her betrayal, I could at least ensure the future narrative would be based on truth. I might have lost my wife and temporarily lost my son's respect, but I wouldn't lose my dignity or my sense of self. I had been a good husband and father, imperfect, certainly, but devoted and loving. No one could take that truth from me, no matter how they tried to distort it. With that resolution firmly in mind, I finally fell into the first peaceful sleep I'd had since walking out of my home a week earlier. Monday morning arrived with newfound determination flowing through my veins. The initial shock and devastation had given way to a clear-headed resolve. I spent the early hours searching for an apartment, securing a month-to-month lease on a one-bedroom unit in a complex across town. It wasn't home, but it would provide stability while I figured out my next steps. Following Barbara Wilson's advice, I gathered all financial documents I could access remotely. What I discovered was more disturbing than I'd anticipated. Linda had been systematically moving small amounts from our joint accounts to her private account for over a year, not enough to trigger my attention at any given time, but cumulatively significant. This wasn't just an affair, it was calculated financial deception. Barbara helped me file for an emergency hearing regarding the emptied college fund. Dissipation of marital assets won't be viewed favorably by the court, she assured me. Especially funds clearly designated for your child's education. My next step was protecting my professional reputation. I scheduled a meeting with Jackson Moore, my company's VP of Technology, to ensure Linda couldn't interfere with my career. Jackson had always been fair-minded, and after hearing a condensed version of events, he became an unexpected ally. Focus on your work, Nathan. It'll give you purpose during this time, he advised. And I'm putting you on the new security protocol project. It could lead to that senior architect position that's opening up next quarter. The opportunity to immerse myself in challenging work was exactly what I needed. I threw myself into the project, working longer hours than necessary, finding comfort in the logical world of code where problems had definable solutions. 3 days after moving into my apartment, I received an unexpected email from my former neighbor, Carol Matthews, who had moved to Florida 2 years earlier. She'd heard about the separation through mutual friends and wanted to reach out. I debated whether to tell you this, her message read, but I think you deserve to know. 4 years ago, while walking my dog late one night, I saw Linda getting into a car with a man who wasn't you. It was parked at the end of our street, and they kissed before driving away. I saw similar incidents a few times over the following months. I never said anything because I didn't want to cause problems without being certain. I'm sorry, Nathan. I should have told you. The revelation that Linda's infidelity predated Richard was another brutal truth to process. What I'd believed was a recent development in an otherwise solid marriage was actually a pattern of behavior. Our relationship had been compromised for years while I remained oblivious, believing in a fidelity that never existed. When I shared this information with Barbara, she was pragmatic. This helps establish a pattern of deception that strengthens our position. Have Carol send a formal statement. Meanwhile, through careful investigation of our home computer's browsing history, I discovered emails between Linda and Richard going back 8 months. In them, Richard advised Linda on how to secure financial advantages before revealing the affair, including recommendations to establish independent credit and secure liquid assets. Most damning were exchanges about real estate commissions. Richard had been assigning Linda the most lucrative listings in exchange for their relationship, violating company policy and possibly real estate regulations. The preferential treatment had significantly boosted her income while disadvantaging other agents. I also found receipts for expensive gifts Linda had purchased for Richard using our family credit card, items totaling thousands of dollars that she'd categorized as business expenses in our budget spreadsheets. The level of premeditation was staggering. Barbara was methodical in building our case, filing motions to freeze remaining joint assets and requesting full financial disclosure. We're not going for blood, she explained. Just a fair division that recognizes the deception and protects your future. Throughout these discoveries, I maintained a dignified silence publicly. When mutual friends reached out, I simply said Linda and I were separating and I appreciated their support. I refused to engage in the smear campaign she'd initiated, even when tempted by new revelations of her betrayal. My attempts to communicate with Ethan continued to be met with hostility or silence. Give him time, Barbara advised. Teenagers often align with the parent they perceive as wounded, But eventually, they see the truth. 2 weeks after moving out, I drove past our house and saw Richard's Audi in the driveway. Linda had moved her lover into our family home while divorce proceedings were barely underway. The sight should have devastated me, but instead, I felt oddly detached. The life I'd built there already seemed to belong to someone else. That detachment was tested when Linda called the following day, the first direct contact since I'd left. Her voice lacked the confident edge I'd heard during our confrontation. "Nathan, I think we should talk," she began, an unfamiliar hesitation in her tone. "Things have been complicated. Richard's been staying here, but it's temporary. I've been thinking about everything, and maybe we acted too hastily." "We?" I repeated, incredulous at her attempt to distribute responsibility for the situation. "You know what I mean," she continued. "Marriages go through rough patches. We have history, a son together. Maybe we should consider counseling before making permanent decisions." It took me a moment to understand what had prompted this sudden change. "Did Richard's wife find out about the affair?" I asked, connecting the dots. The silence confirmed my suspicion before she reluctantly admitted, "They're trying to work things out. But that's not why I'm calling. I genuinely think we should reconsider." "No," I interrupted, surprised by my own firmness. "There's nothing to reconsider, Linda. You made your choice very clear. Several choices, actually, over several years with several men." Her sharp intake of breath told me she hadn't expected me to know about her previous infidelities. "What are you talking about? Richard was a mistake, a one-time." "Stop lying," I said quietly. "I know everything. About the man 4 years ago. About the financial manipulation. About the gifts for Richard charged to our family account. It's over, Linda. I'll communicate through Barbara from now on." I ended the call feeling strangely liberated. For the first time since discovering the affair, I saw Linda's actions with perfect clarity. The woman I'd loved and trusted had been systematically deceiving me for years, not just in her infidelity but in her fundamental character. The realization was painful but ultimately freeing. I was mourning a relationship that had never truly existed the way I believed it had. That evening, I joined a support group for divorced and separated men, something Barbara had gently suggested weeks earlier. Listening to others share similar experiences helped normalize my own pain and provided practical strategies for moving forward. I wasn't alone in this journey, even if it sometimes felt that way. As the month progressed, I began establishing new routines. I found a gym near my apartment and started working out regularly. I reconnected with colleagues I'd neglected during my marriage troubles. I even accepted an invitation to a technology conference I'd previously planned to skip, presenting our team's new security protocol to industry peers. The presentation was well received, earning recognition from several industry leaders and an invitation to contribute to a prestigious technical journal. For the first time in months, I felt competent, valued, and seen for my actual contributions rather than measured against impossible standards. Linda continued her attempts at reconciliation as Richard's presence in her life became increasingly uncertain. Each call or text revealed more about her true character: the manipulation, the conditional affection based on what I could provide, the fundamental selfishness that had always been present but that I'd chosen not to see. I recognized now that I'd been enabling her behavior for years, accepting blame for her dissatisfaction, constantly trying to earn a love that should have been freely given. The patterns were clear in hindsight, and breaking free of them, while painful, was necessary for my healing. By the 6-week mark, I had established a new life that, while solitary, was authentically mine. The apartment had gradually accumulated personal touches. I'd adopted a rescue dog, a gentle golden retriever mix named Cooper, who seemed as grateful for companionship as I was. My work was flourishing, my health improving, and though I missed Ethan terribly, I remained hopeful that time would heal that relationship too. What I couldn't have anticipated was how quickly that healing would begin, or the catalyst that would set it in motion. The catalyst for change came unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing code in my apartment when my phone rang with Ethan's ringtone, the first call from him since I'd left home. I answered immediately, my heart racing. Dad? His voice sounded younger than his 17 years, uncertain and shaken. Can we meet somewhere? I need to talk to you. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop equidistant between my apartment and our former home. I arrived early, nervous about this first face-to-face encounter, uncertain of what had prompted his sudden outreach after weeks of silence or hostility. When Ethan walked in, I was struck by how tired he looked, with dark circles under his eyes and a slump to his shoulders that hadn't been there before. He sat across from me, fidgeting with a napkin, avoiding direct eye contact. Mom's been lying, he finally said, his voice barely audible. About everything. He explained that he'd accidentally discovered text messages on Linda's phone while looking for photos she'd promised to send him. The messages were between Linda and Richard, revealing not only the calculated nature of their affair but also discussing Ethan as a useful pawn in turning the narrative against me. She left her phone unlocked when she went to shower, Ethan continued, his voice gaining strength. There were hundreds of messages, Dad. They were laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me. Richard called me the perfect teenage shield because I'd believe anything Mom said. The pain in his eyes mirrored my own from weeks earlier. The betrayal he felt wasn't just about Linda lying to him, but about being used as a weapon against me. I'm so sorry, he said, tears welling. The things I said to you. I believed her when she said you were controlling and jealous. I thought I was defending her. You were manipulated by an expert, Ethan, I replied gently. We both were. That first conversation was awkward and emotional, filled with long pauses and careful words. We didn't resolve everything in one meeting, but it was a beginning. Ethan asked if he could visit my apartment, meet Cooper, see where I was living now. These small steps toward reconnection meant more to me than he could possibly know. 2 days later, Linda's carefully constructed narrative suffered another blow when Richard ended their relationship completely. His wife had given him an ultimatum: end all contact with Linda or face divorce and a costly settlement. Richard, ever the pragmatist, chose his marriage and financial security. Linda's response was a meltdown that Ethan witnessed firsthand. She threw things, screamed that he was a coward, Ethan told me during his first visit to my apartment. Then she tried calling you like 50 times. When you didn't answer, she started drinking and saying horrible things about you, about Richard, about everyone. The court date for our emergency hearing regarding the college fund arrived the following week. Barbara had prepared thoroughly, documenting Linda's systematic financial deception and the inappropriate use of family funds for personal gifts to her lover. The judge was unimpressed with Linda's tearful claims that she'd been setting aside money for Ethan's future in a separate account. The court finds the respondent's actions constitute clear dissipation of marital assets, the judge stated, ordering Linda to return the funds to a court-supervised account specifically for Ethan's education, with both parents as co-trustees requiring dual authorization for withdrawals. Linda's public reaction to this ruling revealed the side of her that I'd only recently discovered. In the courthouse hallway, she launched into a tirade against me, the judge, and the legal system, loud enough for everyone present to hear. Her carefully cultivated image of the wronged wife crumbled as she shouted profanities and threats. Several colleagues who had been distant since the separation reached out after hearing about the courthouse incident. I should have known Linda was lying, admitted Trevor, a longtime work friend. The Nathan she described bears no resemblance to the man I've known for 10 years. Gradually, my support network expanded. Friends who had initially believed Linda's version of events began to see inconsistencies in her stories. My parents, who had been devastated by the separation but supportive of my decisions, finally met with Ethan again after weeks of Linda preventing contact. Most significantly, Ethan asked if he could stay with me on weekends. Our first weekend together was tentative, both of us navigating a new dynamic. We took Cooper to the dog park, ordered pizza, watched movies, normal activities that felt extraordinary after the painful separation. I found the college brochures in your desk drawer, Ethan mentioned during that first weekend. The ones with all the notes about campus safety and academic support services. I'd spent months researching colleges that would suit Ethan's interests and learning style, making notes about each institution's strengths and potential challenges. It was one of many parental efforts that had gone unnoticed or unappreciated during the chaos of the past year. "You really thought about all that stuff for me?" he asked, seeming surprised by the evidence of my ongoing concern for his future. "Of course," I replied simply. "That's what parents do." Over the following weeks, Ethan began dividing his time more evenly between Linda's house and my apartment, despite her objections. At 17, the courts gave significant weight to his preferences, and he was increasingly clear about wanting a relationship with both parents. Our conversations gradually deepened beyond the immediate crisis. We discussed healthy relationships, respect, and integrity, difficult but necessary topics given what he'd witnessed. "How can you ever trust anyone after what Mom did?" he asked one evening as we walked Cooper around the neighborhood. "Trust has to be earned," I explained. "Your mother and I both made mistakes. I trusted blindly for too long, ignored warning signs I should have seen. But that doesn't mean trust itself is bad or impossible. It just means we should give it appropriately, based on people's actions over time, not just their words." These conversations seemed to help Ethan process what had happened as much as they helped me. The mature way he was handling the situation gave me hope for his future relationships, despite the poor example he'd witnessed. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings continued. Barbara successfully argued for a more equitable division of assets than Linda had initially proposed, particularly regarding retirement accounts and property. Linda fought each concession bitterly, but her earlier financial maneuvers had irreparably damaged her credibility with the court. By the 3-month mark, we had a preliminary settlement agreement that, while not perfect, was fair to both parties and protected Ethan's interests. Linda's initial demands for the house, full retirement accounts, and substantial alimony had been reduced to more reasonable terms that recognized both our contributions to the marriage. The most healing moment came unexpectedly during a routine dinner with Ethan at my apartment. He had been quiet throughout the meal, seemingly deep in thought. "I owe you a real apology," he finally said, meeting my eyes directly. "Not just for believing Mom's lies, but for what I said that day. About you being boring and not good enough. I didn't mean it, Dad. I was just repeating what I'd heard Mom say so many times that I started to think it was true." The genuine remorse in his voice brought tears to my eyes. "I forgive you, Ethan. We were both caught in a situation neither of us created or deserved. You're not boring," he continued earnestly. "You're dependable, which isn't the same thing at all. I never had to wonder if you'd show up for my games or help with my homework or just be there when I needed to talk. Mom's exciting sometimes, but she's not reliable. I see that now." His words healed something fundamental that had been broken inside me. My son saw me, truly saw me, for who I was, not through the distorted lens Linda had created. The validation wasn't about ego but about truth, about being recognized for the father I had always strived to be. That night, after Ethan left, I sat with Cooper on the small balcony of my apartment, looking at the stars and reflecting on the journey of the past months. The pain wasn't gone. I doubted it ever would be completely, but it had transformed into something more manageable, more instructive. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged stronger, with my integrity intact and my most important relationship healing. For the first time since that devastating day when Linda smirked and told me she needed a real man, I felt genuine hope for the future, not just acceptance of a new reality, but actual anticipation for what might come next. The final divorce decree arrived on a crisp autumn morning, almost 6 months to the day since I'd walked out of my former home. The legal document formally ending 18 years of marriage felt surprisingly anticlimactic. The emotional end had come long before, and this was merely administrative closure. Barbara had negotiated a settlement that protected my financial future while being fair to both parties. The house would be sold, with proceeds divided equally after the mortgage was satisfied. Retirement accounts were split based on the duration of the marriage. Linda kept her real estate business contacts and commissions, while I retained my intellectual property rights from software development projects. Most importantly, the college fund for Ethan was secured in a trust that required dual authorization for withdrawals, ensuring the money would be used for its intended purpose regardless of either parent's financial situation. The day after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected promotion at work. The security protocol project I'd immersed myself in during the worst of the separation had been implemented company-wide with tremendous success, saving Tech Solutions substantial money while improving their security posture. Jackson Moore, now the CTO, called me personally to offer the position of Senior Architecture Director. "Your work these past months has been exceptional, Nathan," he said. "Not many people could produce at that level while dealing with personal challenges of that magnitude." The promotion came with a significant salary increase and the option to continue working remotely 2 days a week, giving me flexibility to maintain my new life balance. The professional recognition felt particularly meaningful after years of Linda's criticism about my supposed lack of ambition. Ethan had settled into a routine of spending weekdays with Linda and weekends with me, a schedule that worked for everyone involved. Our relationship had not only recovered but deepened through honest conversations about difficult topics that might never have surfaced otherwise. During one weekend visit, Ethan brought up college applications. "I've been thinking about studying computer science," he said somewhat hesitantly. "I know you never pushed me toward it, but I've always been interested in how you can build something from nothing with just code." The fact that he felt comfortable exploring an interest that connected us, without fear of being accused of choosing sides, represented significant healing. We spent that weekend researching programs together, discussing the rapidly evolving tech industry, and even working through some basic programming exercises that left him excited about the possibilities. Linda's post-divorce adjustment appeared less smooth, based on Ethan's occasional comments and things I heard through mutual acquaintances. Richard had fully reconciled with his wife, leaving Linda without the relationship she'd sacrificed her marriage for. Her real estate business suffered after several clients learned about the unprofessional relationship with her broker, and the emotional toll was evident in erratic behavior that concerned Ethan. I maintained a strict policy of never criticizing Linda in front of our son, regardless of provocation. When Ethan shared frustrations about her behavior, I listened supportively but refrained from adding negative commentary. "She's still adjusting," I would say. "And she's still your mother, regardless of what happened between us." This approach wasn't about protecting Linda but about protecting Ethan from feeling caught between warring parents. It also modeled the maturity and integrity I hoped he would carry into his own adult relationships. Linda's attempts to reconnect romantically continued sporadically, especially when she'd been drinking. I deflected these overtures firmly but without cruelty, maintaining necessary communication about Ethan while establishing clear boundaries around our personal interaction. The most significant test of these boundaries came 3 months after the divorce, when Linda appeared at my apartment unannounced late one evening. Her appearance was disheveled, her speech slightly slurred from alcohol. "We made a mistake, Nathan," she insisted, trying to push past me into the apartment. "We had 18 years together. You can't just throw that away." "You threw it away," I replied calmly, blocking the entrance. "Multiple times, with multiple men, over many years. The divorce is final, Linda. We need to focus on co-parenting Ethan effectively, nothing more." "You're punishing me," she accused, tears forming. "One mistake." "It wasn't one mistake. It was hundreds of deliberate choices," I interrupted, my voice firm but not unkind. "I forgive you, Linda, for my own peace of mind. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. That chapter of our lives is closed." She stared at me for a long moment, perhaps seeing for the first time the fundamental change in me, the strengthened boundaries, the clear self-respect that would have been unrecognizable in the man who had desperately tried to save our marriage a year earlier. "You've changed," she finally said, the accusation in her tone suggesting this was somehow unfair to her. "Yes," I agreed simply. "I have." After she left, I realized the encounter hadn't destabilized me emotionally as it might have months earlier. I felt compassion for her struggle but no desire to rescue her from the consequences of her choices. My healing wasn't about hardening my heart but about valuing myself enough to maintain healthy boundaries. Around the 8-month mark after the separation, I met Catherine Chin at a local bookstore's reading group. She was a literature professor at the community college, divorced herself 5 years earlier, with a quiet intelligence and genuine warmth that drew me immediately. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours, ranging from favorite authors to technological ethics to the challenges of rebuilding after significant life changes. Our relationship developed slowly and thoughtfully. Catherine understood the complex dynamics of blended families and divorce recovery, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. When I finally introduced her to Ethan after 2 months of dating, I was nervous about his reaction. His initial response was predictably protective and somewhat territorial. "So is she your girlfriend?" he asked bluntly after Catherine left that first evening. "We're getting to know each other," I replied honestly. "I value her company and perspective. But you should know that no relationship will ever change my commitment to you as my son." Over several more meetings, Ethan gradually warmed to Catherine, especially after discovering their shared interest in science fiction and her genuine curiosity about his college plans. She never attempted to take a parental role but treated him with authentic respect as a young adult forming his own identity. Linda's reaction to hearing about Catherine from Ethan was less measured. According to Ethan, she went through cycles of criticism. "She's probably just after your father's money." And self-pity. "I guess I'm just easily replaced." I advised Ethan to acknowledge his mother's feelings without getting drawn into her emotional reactions. "It's natural for her to have complicated feelings," I explained. "But those feelings are hers to process, not yours to fix." As my 1-year anniversary of leaving approached, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey from devastation to rebuilding. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. Certain memories or anniversary dates still brought a dull ache, but it no longer defined my daily experience or decision-making process. I'd learned crucial lessons about self-respect, boundaries, and the courage to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life. I'd discovered resilience I never knew I possessed and built a new life that, while different from what I'd planned, was authentic and increasingly fulfilling. Most precious was the renewed relationship with Ethan, now built on mutual respect and honesty rather than the unexamined assumptions of our earlier bond. Watching him mature through this challenging experience gave me hope that he would carry valuable lessons into his own future relationships. The final piece of healing came unexpectedly during a father-son camping trip to the White Mountains. Sitting by the campfire after a day of hiking, Ethan asked a question that caught me off guard. "Do you regret marrying Mom? If you could go back, would you do it all differently?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "I can't regret the choices that brought you into my life," I said finally. "And there were good years, real love, before things changed. What I regret is staying too long after the relationship became unhealthy, accepting disrespect, ignoring red flags, teaching you through my example that love means enduring mistreatment." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand now why you left the way you did. It wasn't just about the cheating. It was about self-respect." "Exactly," I agreed. "Love without respect isn't really love at all. It's dependence, or habit, or fear of being alone. Real love enhances your sense of self, it doesn't diminish it." As we sat watching the flames, I realized how far we'd both come from that devastating day when Linda smirked and said she needed a real man. The comment that had once cut me to the core now seemed revealed for what it truly was, a reflection of her character, not mine. The following weekend, Ethan, Catherine, and I had dinner together at my apartment. Cooper contentedly settled at our feet. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter and thoughtful exchanges. Looking around the table, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for this new family we were carefully building, not a replacement for what was lost, but something different and authentic, founded on mutual respect and genuine care. Later that evening, After Ethan had gone back to Linda's and Catherine had gone home, I sat on my balcony looking at the stars, reflecting on the journey of the past year. The path had been unimaginably painful at times, but it had led me to a place of greater authenticity and self-knowledge than I'd ever experienced before. I realized that walking away that day, smiling, taking my keys, and choosing self-respect over continued degradation, had been the most important decision of my adult life. Not because it punished Linda or proved anything to others, but because it represented choosing myself after years of placing everyone else's needs first. True strength, I now understood, isn't found in dominating others or projecting an image of power. It's found in maintaining your dignity and integrity even when everything around you is crumbling. It's found in the courage to walk away from relationships that diminish your spirit, and in the resilience to build something new from the ashes of what you once believed would last forever. Have you ever had to walk away from something you thought would last forever? Did it ultimately lead you to a better place, like it did for me? Share your experience in the comments, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life journeys of resilience and recovery. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings make way for the most authentic beginnings. Thank you for being part of this community where we can learn and grow together through life's most challenging moments.